This is Into the Story, the podcast where you learn English with true stories from all over the world. Stories that connect us and inspire you to get where you want to go. Hi, it's your host, Bree, and welcome to this special bonus episode of Into the Story. In these bonus conversations, I sit down with storytellers to go a little deeper into their lives, into their process, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Today, I'm speaking with Will Greenblatt, a professional speaking coach, performer, and someone who helps people not just speak better, but speak more honestly. If you haven't listened to last week's story, Validation Addict, I recommend that you go back and listen. You're going to hear about a very specific moment in Will's life where things changed for him. But for this episode, we are going to talk about how to connect with people through storytelling, what it really means to be seen instead of just liked, and why the advice, do what you love and the money will come, might just be the worst advice he's ever gotten. I know that you're going to enjoy this conversation. It's honest and full of insights. Do you ever worry about speaking English in high-pressure situations like presentations, meetings, or interviews? My free newsletter gives you practical tools to speak more clearly, sound more confident, and connect with whoever you're speaking to without overthinking every word. It's designed for non-native English-speaking professionals who want to speak with real impact. You can sign up at intothestorypodcast.com. All right, let's get into my conversation with Will Greenblatt. Something that I think is really interesting about you and your story is that you describe yourself as a recovering validation addict. And one thing is that you still are on a stage, right?
Yeah.
For you, though, what is the difference between being liked and being seen?
What a good way of putting it. I think that sums it up in the sense that being liked is a Band-Aid solution for a deeper emptiness within yourself. The need to be liked, I should say. The need for connection is much deeper and much more important for human life. And so for me now, I still obsess over whether people like me, but I'm aware of that obsession now, and I'm aware of the dark side of the obsession, and I'm aware of how it makes me behave in ways that are not consistent with my values. So when I get on stage, my work becomes, okay, I need to speak clearly, and I want to tell exciting stories, and I want to be entertaining, and I want to deliver value. So I do a lot of workshops where I have to teach people something in order for them to feel like they got their money's worth. But I also know that it's much more important for people to feel a connection with me as a real human being by me sharing the real honest stories and trying to not bullshit to make them like me and then buy my course or hire me, whatever, but to just show them that this is who I am, this is what I care about, this is what I know, and this is what I want you to learn or think about. And if I can do that as honestly as I can, not trying to make it polished, but trying to make it real, then I think I probably get fewer work opportunities, but better ones that are more aligned with what I want to do, and ones that are more of a like, fuck yes, versus yeah, sure, we'll pay you, whatever. Like I want those really great connections with people who have this same view of this weird corporate storytelling work that we do, who see in it a real opportunity for human connection. It's not just about making as much money as you can, but trying to live a life and make a living in a way that doesn't make you feel gross and makes you feel like you can be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like for you, it's about having a purpose. It's about enjoying your life, enjoying your work. And what is there a time when you can recall telling a story on stage or telling an anecdote from your life where it didn't land like you thought it would, but you were like, that's okay. They didn't
Mm,
like it. It doesn't mean they don't like me, but they didn't
yeah.
like what I had to say, and I'm okay with that.
I really hate to say this because it's going to sound super douchey,
I can't
but
wait to
like
hear what you're going to say.
most of my stuff tends to land. I feel like such an asshole for saying that. So I haven't really bombed in my career. Like I've bombed early on just being at the wrong place, but not in a place where it made sense that I was there. Like I went into a college once because my buddy brought me in and to speak to his like 19-year-olds, and they were like, what the fuck is this guy doing here? So like I've had those moments, but I was like, who cares? This is free and it's for my friend. And but I haven't bombed a lot, which I think is a shame because I think it probably means I'm not pushing myself enough and I'm not like getting out there. But I do remember I started a workshop with a story recently, and it didn't necessarily bomb, but it didn't maybe land fully. And it was because I went against my own instincts, I think, which I started with a story about money. And I was like, here's a time that I spent $13,000 on this thing. And I kind of hate when people do that. And I know it's a bit of a psychological trick. If you throw a big odd number out there, people pay attention. And I did it kind of as a trick, as a hack to test it out and see if it worked. And I was like, I should have just stuck to what I do, which is telling like real stories and not trying to make a little LinkedIn, YouTube hook to get their attention. So that I kind of feel like is something that I learned from, where I'm like, just don't you don't have to use the psychological tricks and the hacks and the manipulation as much. Just do what you do and tell the story and tell it honestly. Like it's good to understand how to structure an opener of a speech so that people pay attention. But it's also not you don't have to do it the way that the fucking people on LinkedIn and YouTube tell you these psychological tricks will make you more money. You can be yourself more. And so I think I learned that from that experience.
Something that I feel and that I hear when I speak with you and when I've listened to your story is that so much of what you teach and you live is like find your own flavor of whatever it is. Find what is feels true to you. Yes, learn. Yes, try different things, but in the end, it's every person is different. You're going to find your own way. Do you teach that when you work with clients?
Yeah, I try to. So, for example, they're telling their own stories, and I teach them to tell personal stories, like the kind of stuff we've been talking about, and I also teach them to like feel better speaking on stage and on camera, so that they feel confident in the way they present themselves. So, there's two ways you can go about that. You can teach stagecraft tricks, some of which I learned in theater school, or you can teach how to go inside and go, who am I really? What do I really care about? What do I really want to say? Am I being truthful? Am I being honest? Am I being present? And then the way that you communicate from there ends up being more watchable and more interesting and more engaging. So I like the second way way better. I also think of something that many artists have said over the years. You kind of copy people at first until you find your own voice. And that's a sentiment that all artists are familiar with. Is like when you first start acting, you just copy your favorite actor. For me, it was James Gandolfini. I just did what James Gandolfini did in The Sopranos while I was at theater school, and it worked really well for me. But eventually, I had to find my own style and my own voice and my own thing. When I played music and wrote music, I would just write songs that I thought Neil Young would write, and then eventually I had, or Bob Dylan, and eventually I had to find my own flavor. And that's what happens is you copy other people, and that's good. That's part of the process when you're starting out. Find people you really like and just fucking copy them. Do what they're doing. And then slowly that'll get you over the hump of just being nothing, and you start to find your own voice. And it's just about peeling back the layers of artifice and of bullshit and of virtue signaling and of homage to your favorites, and just going, what do I really believe? What do I really want to say? And what is the most authentic version of me showing up right now? And that's a lifelong process, but I think thinking that way is so important to start it.
Mm-hmm. Something that I do with clients, and I've recommended people who listen to this podcast do, because honestly, a lot of people don't like their accent when they speak in another language.
Yeah.
And a way to, I never think you should change your accent ever. I would never
Yeah.
want to change mine. But a way to improve the way you speak, improve pronunciation is to do that, is to choose someone that you like, can be an actor, can be a podcaster, and actually just shadow the way they speak and
Yeah.
do it in a very exaggerated way to train your voice. So I'm interested to hear you talking about that. I know
Yeah.
that you, as you said in your story, you worked for a short time as an English teacher. Is there anything that you learned? You talked a little bit about things that you use from acting school and theater school. But is there anything you learned from your time as an English teacher that you use with your clients today?
My God, yeah, so
Yeah?
much. The ESA method, do you know about that?
No.
Engage, study, activate. That's like the basis for how I constructed my signature workshop template, which is one of the main things I teach clients who are starting their speaking careers. So I tell them, better to start with a workshop than a keynote, because usually keynote speakers are more famous and well established. Anyways, that's kind of the pitch. But so we're like, what makes a good workshop? And I go, well, I'm not a corporate facilitator. That's not my background, but I did come from education. And when I was studying to be a teacher and actually got into it, I learned about this ESA method, which is engage, study, activate. Engage is like, have a hook, have an opener, have a tricky, funny, kind of under the radar, can be sneaky thing that gets the students paying attention. Then you study something that is relevant to how you engage their attention, and then they practice it, they activate it. So lessons that don't include those components tend to not stick as well or not be as interesting. So I use that all the time in helping people with workshops, is like engage, study, activate. This concept of rough tuning. Rough tuning is for the teachers themselves, but it's about when you're speaking to a class, you kind of constantly have to be monitoring the way that you're speaking so that they understand it. You can't just talk like you talk with your friends, like, hey man, pass the thing, because they won't follow you. So it's almost like a constant self-monitoring, which can drive you nuts, but it makes for really clear communication. So I talk about that concept a lot. And then finally, just understanding grammar for native English speakers too, because they never really learn it well. Growing up, they learn by immersion, so they don't study grammar. Understanding grammar and how it works is so good for communication and for speaking, because there's nuance and there's important distinctions in grammar. You would do something versus you will do something, or like little things like that. And if you're conscious of the rules, you can use them much more effectively. So yeah, tons of things. I could go on and on.
Yeah. There's one thing that I sometimes think, and it can be true and cannot be true, but I want to hear your point of view. I've heard some native English speakers give speeches that are good. Maybe not great, but they're good. And I've heard some non-native English speakers give incredible speeches.
Yeah.
And those ones that do give incredible speeches, I feel like it's because they are so to the point. They know what they want
Yeah.
to say. They don't get lost in their own words.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that, or do you have any opinion about that, native versus non-native?
I feel the exact same way. And I say this to my non-native English speaking clients all the time. I to be honest, I started saying it as just a point of encouragement. I believed it, but I was kind of saying it more just to make them feel better. I would say, listen, you actually have this advantage as a non-native English speaker, because you're not going to use all these fancy words, all this jargon. You're just going to say, this was bad, we fixed it, or like stuff like that, which is actually better communication. And then over time, I really came to believe that and see that how true it was. Is like, the more effective I find myself, excuse me, able to communicate is when I simplify my language and just say the most simple version of it without ornamentation. Ornamentation is fun, like the word ornamentation, but it's not the essence of what you're trying to say, you know? And so monosyllabic language, 1 to 2 syllable words, 5th grade reading level, to the point, is much more effective. And non-native speakers have that constraint that is actually kind of freeing. Because a native English speaker can just get up there and blah, 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 say nothing in 5,000 words. But non-native
Yeah.
English speakers have to be more present and use a much more simple vocabulary, which actually lands better. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you're worried at your lack of vocabulary, lean into it and embrace it, and don't try to find the perfect word. Try to find the simplest word.
Absolutely. If I gave you 5 Canadian dollars, which doesn't go that far these days, Will.
Three euro cents. Yes.
If I gave you 5 Canadian dollars and you went to the corner store, what would you
Yeah.
buy for yourself? Not for your
Oh,
family
I
or
was
your
gonna say for
children. I
my
know you're a
daughter.
dad.
Yeah.
No, you
Okay.
can't buy
Yeah.
your kids anything. Has to be for
Okay.
you. What would you buy
5
yourself?
Canadian dollars, which buys like nothing these days. I'd probably get a ginger ale. I'd
It's very
get,
Canadian. A
yeah,
ginger ale.
Canada Dry. I'd
Nice.
get a ginger ale. And maybe I'd get, like, honestly, a big bag of chips now is like $6.59. Like, it's just 5 is nothing. It gets you nothing.
What?
So I'd get a ginger ale. It's just like $1.30 now, and then I'd maybe get a small bag. I don't want to be too Canadian, say ketchup Lay's, even though it might be. But that's like too Canadian. Yeah, get maybe barbecue Lay's or ketchup Lay's, and so pop in a bag of chips.
Okay, a pop.
Yep.
You just like, you can't hide your Canadianness. A pop.
Pop in a bag of chips, eh? Fucking yeah. Oh, sorry, PG.
What is your, you can choose, I'll give you 2 options. Pick your own adventure. One daily practice that you have to keep yourself and your mindset clear, good, whatever word you want to use, or your morning routine that sets you up for a good day, whichever of those you want to choose.
So yeah, my morning routine is all based around my daughter and our dog, and getting the dog walked and my daughter to daycare. So that's not really like me time. Although walking my dog is the best. When I walk her in the morning, my wife and I will like alternate who walks the dog, who takes our daughter in. When I walk the dog, I make sure to keep my phone away, leave it at home, or at least make sure I don't take it out of my pocket, and just be present with her. Mindfulness, meditation, and presence is huge for me. And so I'm very bad at practicing it, but when I do, the results are just amazing. If I can walk my dog and spend an hour outside paying attention to her and the birds and the trees and the people, and that sets me up well. And then when I can't do that, I make sure I either go to the gym or I meditate for 5 to 10 minutes before bed, because it's kind of the only time I have. And so the idea for me is like, it's some kind of meditation or mindfulness or presence or physical movement. And if I don't do any of that in a day, then I'm not having fun.
So those are your non-negotiables. You need to do one of those
They're
things.
heavily negotiable, unfortunately. But like when I do them, I'm not good at this stage of my life at carving out time for myself. My wife and I are expecting another child in September, which I'm thrilled about, but is going to be insane in its own right. And she's also, she's laid a bit more low than usual by the pregnancy. So, I'm having to step up, and obviously it's the least I can do because she's actually creating the child. And that takes a vicious toll, as you don't need me to tell you. And so, but it's a lot of childcare. It's a lot of time with the dogs, cleaning, cooking, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's hard. But that's it, and it's not going to be like this forever. So I'm just doing what I can to work out at home, get to the gym once a week if I can, work out outside while I take my dog for a walk, do some push-ups and squats and whatever, pull-ups. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's such
Treading
an
water,
exciting,
keeping the nose and the
yeah.
mouth just barely above the water level. And yeah.
Yeah. That's
Thank
it's such a fun, exciting time when you're expecting your first, second, or other children. It's just like
Yeah.
such a special period of time where you're like really inward and, making the nest and being together as a family.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, for sure. I love it.
Is there a specific practice you have with your phone where you put your phone, I've heard like the phone needs to be like in a drawer 2 rooms away from you. Some people even go as far as getting
as getting a container where they like put their phone in and have a timer on it. Do you feel that addiction to the phone? Is it non-issue for you?
Oh, it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue for me. I'm in the process of like, there's a great newsletter called Breaking Up with Your Phone that I'm subscribed to. I do a symbolic thing sometimes where I have a really good phone case. I'll throw it down the hallway, like into a pile of clothes usually, but sometimes it misses and it bounces. It's fine. I fucking hate this thing and I love it at the same time. And I just like, I make money on this thing by talking to people on LinkedIn. And that makes me feel that like I'm doing something good for the world and my family, blah, blah, blah. But it's just, it's got a complete hold on me. And so I'm fighting back against that right now. I'm following Jonathan Haidt and all the work he's doing with the anxious generation about smartphones and social media, especially their effect on children and Gen Z in particular and Gen Alpha. So I'm very interested in this topic, and I feel like I'm starting to wage my war against my phone addiction, but it's slow going.
And my last question is, what is the worst advice you've ever been given?
I hate to say it, but do what you love and the money will come.
Tell me more.
It's not been my experience. Maybe it is for some people. I think it's, that kind of advice comes from survivorship bias, where somebody who made it that way says, hey, well, look at me, I did it. So do what you love and the money will come. And I think the reality is for most people, it's either hard to find what they love, or what they love, it's hard to monetize that, or whatever. And so learning how money is made through the process of marketing and sales and product and services, and understanding what people will pay for, how to find and solve pain points, how to do research to understand what it is that people want to pay for, how to make your skills valuable in the marketplace, all that requires a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of practice and failure. And so do what you love and the money will come really made sure I made no money up until very recently, and I'm still trying to get build some wealth here and fucking maybe buy a house, although maybe never. But I think if I keep learning how to make money and I keep building my business, I think it'll be okay. That's a
really honest and a really good one, and not something many people talk about. So
yeah, you got to learn how money works. Yeah,
you absolutely have to learn how money works, and something that we're not really taught. And I think it is harmful to say to people, just do what you love and the money will come. I don't think it's helped any millennial, right? It hasn't.
It's helped like 7 people in the world.
Yeah.
And the rest of us were just like, well, I did what I loved, and now nobody's like watching my Pokemon channel, or like whatever it is. You have to understand how marketing and sales and business and cash flow and all that stuff. It sucks. I hate it. I hate thinking about the money side of my business, but I need to, otherwise it won't work. And then I don't get to do what I love. I got to go find a shitty job.
But for the time that you're on stage, for the time you're getting to communicate and be open and vulnerable and really connect with people, you are. So there's a part of what you do that you love, but there's just a lot of other things.
I think it's what I would amend that advice to is do what you love and learn how to make money from it.
I like it. Will, thank you so much for your time and coming on the podcast and sharing your story and being vulnerable. And just sharing your expertise. It was so much fun. I loved this conversation.
Thank you so much. This was a really fun one for me. I've never done a podcast like this, so it was a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was my conversation with Will. I hope that you found it as honest and inspiring as I did. Whether you're stepping onto a stage, recording a video, or just trying to feel more like yourself when you speak in English, Will reminds us that connection matters more than perfection. That is it for this episode and for this season. As many of you know, I am a communication coach, and between seasons of the Into the Story podcast, I get more time to do what I love most, helping real people show up and speak up at work. I work with clients in one-to-one sessions and lead communication workshops for teams. If you want to join my course, Speak with Impact, this fall, or you just want to keep learning with me, then don't forget to sign up for my newsletter at intothestorypodcast.com. Okay, that is all for today. Until the next time, I hope that you have a good time, or at least a good story to tell.